Welcome back to Let's Theorise with Pies. To stem the angry comments, I'm going to kick this off with a list of things Hopper did in Season 3 that I didn't like. He was aggressive, he threatened Mike, he sniped at Joyce, and he was selfish. I didn't agree with some of his choices this season, but I don't consider them to be problems with how the character was written, merely the character's flaws. None of my defence of Hopper is an attempt to justify this behaviour. I don't think he was in the right, but I also don't think that it's just buffoonery added to the show purely for laughs. I think that the behaviour makes sense for the character based on the last two seasons and the changes that have occurred by season 3. Many people have taken Hopper's moments of growth in season 2, the conversations with Elle and Mike, as a total shift in his character. They see his current bad behaviour as a regression to before that point in time, but I don't think that character progression is nearly so linear. Even though he did learn from those experiences, they didn't change his personality. Being able to have a deep conversation with your kid after she comes home from running away and is en route to a suicide mission is not the same as being able to converse openly with your kid about their relationships or anything about being a teenager, really. Acknowledging his fear of destroying everything around him and losing Elle, like he did Sarah, doesn't mean that he no longer has those fears. And it doesn't fix the anger issues that caused her to run away in the first place, even if it shows that he wants to work on them. As for Mike, it seems that lots of people expected a really good relationship between them after Mike's breakdown to Hop in season 2. Hopper clearly felt bad about lying to him for nearly a year when he saw how much he cared about Elle. They had a heartfelt moment, and Hopper let Elle go to the snowball with him, so people expected them to get on well. But a hug doesn't automatically lead to the buddy-buddy father-son relationship that some wanted them to have. I think, if anything, the whole incident was more likely to breed mistrust on Mike's end, and it might have started their relationship off with an odd power dynamic where Hopper feels like he owes Mike time with Elle rather than the standard relationship one might have with any of your kids' friends. So even though he was able to empathise with the kids in season 2, I don't think it automatically leads to empathising with them in every situation or being comfortable having uncomfortable conversations with teenagers. A regular complaint I've heard is that Hopper's attitude comes from nowhere, and that there are no logical triggers for his behaviour. I see two clear reasons for Hopper's attitude in season 3. The first and most obvious is the constant presence of Mike. We don't know at what point Hopper started to be jealous of all the time that Mike was spending with Elle, but I imagine that it reached a tipping point during the summer holidays. My research suggests that the summer break in Indiana typically starts between late May and the beginning of June, which means that it's been going on for at least 4 weeks when season 3 begins. Throughout the year, even if Mike sees Elle every single day, he can only be around for a couple of hours a day at most. He's got school, homework, he has to go home and eat dinner with his parents on occasion. But in the summer holidays, Mike's parents don't expect to see much of him, so he has a lot more freedom to spend all his time with Elle. Unless you're a saint, the constant presence of anyone in your house can become irksome. I think that a month into the holidays he was at his breaking point, and when Mike decided to act like a smarmy little dingleberry, it compounded that irritation. Please note that I'm not trying to shift the blame for Hopper's terrible attitude onto Mike, or excusing his jealousy or his violent outburst. I'm just saying that it didn't come out of nowhere. The second trigger for Hopper's bad attitude is that he finds out that Joyce is planning to move away. This tends to get overlooked as a reason for Hopper's volatile moods, but I think it's probably the most important factor. His relationships with Elle and Joyce are what brought him back from the brink. They're what tie him to the world. They're the reason why he even tries to be a functioning human being. He feels like he's losing his connection with Elle and losing his chance at a romantic connection with Joyce, and by trying to hold on to those connections too tight, he's choking them. His insecurity about losing Joyce is bound to play into his general attitude. I think it's very likely that he would regress a little, or at least stop progressing emotionally, when the two pillars that he's built his life on feel shaky. On to the accusations of Hopper acting like a completely different person in season 3. I've already touched on the supposed total 180 in character in regards to his relationships with Elle, Mike and Joyce, none of which I consider a change in his character, but a product of his situation and his in-character mishandling of them, but I'll try and touch on as many of the other complaints as I can. His beating up of the mayor is often brought up as out of character, despite the fact that he did the same thing in season 1. When he was trying to check on the person who found Will's body, he wasn't getting anywhere with questions and decided to beat the guy until he gave up some information. In both instances, he believed something fishy was going on and that it was necessary to get answers through violence. And with Mayor Larry, he had an additional incentive to want to punch him in the face, as Larry had brought up Hopper's daughter while they were arguing and said, "Don't give me that dead daughter sob story because I just don't care." I'd want to punch him in the face too. Of course I wouldn't, but I'm not Hopper, and he would. His general action movie hero thing didn't start in season 3. In season 1, he breaks into Hawkins' lab, gets caught by 2 guards, knocks one out with a punch, holds a gun on the other one whilst he disarms him and steals his security key, then goes through the door and shoots the lock. Classic action hero stuff. And in the episode where he beats up the guy who found Will's fake body, he also knocked out a state trooper so that he could go in and look at the body. In season 2, he knocked out the guards who were trying to catch the kids in the junkyard and tried to take on the tunnels single-handedly. He's always been an absurd action hero. Hopper's behaviour when drunk is also described as coming out of nowhere. People are somehow shocked that a man who clearly had issues with drugs and alcohol in the past got drunk and acted like an idiot. I'm not. Hopper ordered a bottle of wine to share with Joyce at their dinner. While waiting for her to show up, he drank his way through that bottle. His embarrassment and irritation at being stood up made him drink more, and drinking more made him act worse. Neither the drinking or the aggressive behaviour are new. I do agree that he was being selfish this season, putting his irritation first, but I don't think he stopped caring about Elle. In season 2, he was able to apologise for some of his flaws, whereas in season 3, he doesn't apologise to Elle for messing with her relationship. I don't think that these situations are particularly similar. In season 2, he lost his temper and Elle was clearly upset. His anger was quelled by seeing Elle upset. He didn't have that same motivation in season 3. Sure, when she first got the call that Mike wasn't coming over, she seemed a bit pissed off and she shut the door in his face. But she wasn't having an emotional breakdown over it. She was just acting like a grumpy teenager. And the only other time that he sees her before the finale is when she's hanging out with Max and she seems perfectly content. I don't think that he was even aware that the lie that he'd forced Mike to tell had caused them to break up. So I'm not sure why he would feel particularly guilty about his choices. Had Elle been upset, I think that he would have shown remorse, but from his perspective, his goal was to get Mike to spend one day not at his house. It worked, and Elle didn't seem particularly fazed by it. He should have felt guilty about berating and threatening Mike, but I expect he didn't realise that immediately because Mike didn't react emotionally to his outburst either. And while he didn't actually apologise to Mike, I think that calling him over as he was leaving to tell him to be careful was his attempt to show that he cared what happened to him, and it was the closest he could bring himself to apologising at the time. Claims that Hopper was gaslighting Joyce irritate me, and even claims that he was treating her like she was crazy all season bother me. Other than the pot calling the kettle black line when she calls Murray certifiable, Hopper didn't call Joyce crazy all season, and I don't think that that line was meant in a vicious way. He doesn't call her crazy during the argument at the house when she tells him about her magnet theory. He said she was inventing things to get worked up about so that she could push him away. And when he follows her to the lab to prove it had been sealed, he gave a speech about how she wasn't crazy, so he definitely wasn't trying to trick her into thinking she was insane. He just thought she had a little bit of PTSD, like he does. And yes, he sniped at her for the majority of the season, but he did have reasons to be pissed at the world. Any irritation shown before he got beaten up by the Terminator is completely on him, but any pissy behaviour that comes after that moment is softened by the fact that Hopper knows he's probably in charge of saving the world again, a job that usually requires risking Elle's life. It's not like they were in an easy situation. I also don't find him hitting on her 7 months after Bob died to be out of character. He was hitting on her while they were still dating, and he knows that it might be his last chance. I just feel like every description of how out of character Hopper was in season 3 sounded like a regular description of him from the earlier seasons. I feel like a lot of people had blinkers on to his earlier misdeeds. The uproar about his drink driving in season 3 makes me really think that people didn't notice his pill and alcohol addiction in season 1. He seemed to be medicated most of the time and getting to and from work in a car, but suddenly it's wildly out of character. It's a regression, for sure, but he isn't a different person. And I think he's regressing because he feels like he's losing all the things that made him want to be a better man, and he's trying too hard to hold on to them. I still love Hopper. I think he's a flawed man, but a great character. In the first season, he was learning how to be a person again. In the second, he was learning how to be a father to a child again. And in the third, he was in entirely new territory, learning how to be parent to a teenager, all the while trying to hold on to his happy ending from season 2, where his family was safe and he might have a chance with Joyce one day and his relationship with Elle looked set to improve. With all of that in ruins by episode 3, I can see why he lost it a bit. I think it's interesting that so many people say the upbeat tone of the third season is partly to blame for their irritation at Hopper, that the light-hearted way the show dealt with it didn't strike the appropriate chord, and that his bad behaviour was played for laughs, allowing him to escape blame from the audience. But conversely, I think that the tone shift actually highlighted that bad behaviour, as so many people are now angry at his behaviour, where so few were angry at the exact same behaviour during a darker toned earlier season. Well, I wrote essay-length responses to most of the quotes I pulled, so I've got more that I could say about all of these points, and I will happily expand on them in the comments, as I expect there will be some vocal response to this video. I also feel like I may have missed a major point, so do let me know if there's a massively out-of-character trait that I neglected to mention. Like and subscribe if you want to, but please do get in on the conversation. I love to hear people's opinions on a character. Hope you like the pie. Thanks for watching. Bye!